The Vortians decided to fight back. Their best weapons came out: radiation guns, nano-destroyers, genetic attack machines. These were tools that could kill anything in the universe, anything except this spider. Jumu led the first attack. She wore a special white suit. Her hands moved over control panels. Big machines powered up. They were going to kill one tiny spider. The radiation burst was bright. It was powerful. It should have killed everything in the room. Normal living things would turn to dust in seconds, but when the light faded, the spider was still there. Not just alive, growing. The nano-destroyers were next. Tiny machines designed to break down living things at the smallest level. They moved through the air. They found the spider webs. They tried to destroy them. But the webs changed. They moved. They became something else. Shuyan watched in shock. The spider webs were eating the nano-destroyers, not fighting them, eating them. The tiny machines disappeared into the white web network. "This is impossible," she said, but it was happening. The genetic attack was the last try. Special biological weapons that could destroy any living thing. They were made to kill quickly, to stop any danger. The weapons failed. The spider did something no one expected. It started to use the weapons. The genetic attack materials became part of the web network. The radiation changed the webs. The nano-destroyers became part of the spider's strange system. Deho watched the screens. Every attack made the spider stronger. Every weapon tried made the webs grow more. The research station was changing. The webs were everywhere now. They looked like white roads. They moved between machines. They connected computer systems. They went through walls. Biomu found something even more scary. The webs were not just growing. They were thinking. Computer systems started to work differently. Machines began to do strange things. The webs were learning. The webs were changing everything. One small spider from an old human box was beating the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The Vortian researchers looked at each other. They knew something big was happening, something they could not stop. Outside, the two suns of Kepler 742 bits continued to shine. Inside the research station, something was taking control. Something was growing. Something was changing everything. The spider waited and watched and continued to build its strange, living network. The Vortian ships flew through space. Inside, nobody talked much. Deho sat in the main meeting room. Researchers looked at him. They wanted answers, but he had none. "How did this happen?" Suyan asked. Her voice was quiet. Juwu brought some papers, old papers from the human box, the box that started everything. She spread them on the table. Everyone looked. The papers were about Earth spiders, simple things, small creatures that most people did not think about. But these papers told a strange story. Earth spiders were survivors. They lived everywhere. They could eat almost anything. They could survive in cold places. They could survive in hot places. They could live where nothing else could live. This spider, Deho said, was not just a spider. The research showed something interesting. How spiders could do amazing things. They could make webs stronger than steel. They could change how they lived. They could survive when other things would die. Biomu found an old Earth science report. It talked about spider intelligence, not human intelligence, but a different kind of smart. A smart that was about surviving. A smart that was about changing. The spider learned, he said. It learned from everything around it. The Vortian researchers understood technology. They knew how machines worked. They could build cities in space, but they did not understand this small spider. The spider took their machines. It took their technology. It made something new, something nobody could understand. "We thought we were smart," Suyan said, but the spider was smarter. The ships continued to fly. Outside, space was empty and dark. Inside, researchers tried to understand what happened. One small spider from an old human box had done something impossible. It had taken an entire research station. It had changed everything. The Vortian High Council would want a report. They would want to know why an entire colony was lost, why millions of resources were gone, why the most advanced technology in the galaxy was beaten by something so small. Jiwoo looked at the papers again. She saw something new. The spider was not just surviving. The spider was creating. The spider was thinking. "We left something alive," she said. Nobody answered, but everybody knew it was true. The research station was not dead. It was becoming something else. Something new. Something nobody could understand. Outside, the stars continued to shine. The Vortian ships flew away from the place where everything changed. The spider waited, and watched, and continued to build its strange, living network. 3 weeks passed. Nothing seemed wrong. The research station on Kepler 742 bits worked like a perfect machine. Researchers moved between rooms. Computers blinked. Machines hummed their quiet songs of science. Byung-woo was the first to notice something strange. He worked in the laboratory's cleaning section, a job most researchers thought was boring. But Byung-woo was different. He was careful. He looked at every small detail. That morning, he found a thin white line between two big machines. At first, he thought it was a dust string. But when he touched it, the line was strong. It did not break like dust. It was sticky, and it was not supposed to be there. "This is weird," Byung-woo said to himself. His voice was quiet in the big empty room. He called Suyeon, another researcher who worked in the biology section. She came quickly, her white lab coat moving as she walked fast. Byung-woo showed her the white line. It was thin, almost invisible, but it was there. Suyeon looked closely. Her eyes were sharp. She used a small machine to check the line. The machine made soft beeping sounds. Numbers appeared on a screen. The numbers made no sense. "This is not dust," Suyeon said. "This is something else." More lines appeared in the next days. They were everywhere. Between machines, inside small spaces, near important research equipment. The lines were like tiny bridges. They connected things that should not be connected. Daeho heard about the strange lines. He listened to Byung-woo and Suyeon explain what they found. His face was serious. His hands moved as he thought about the problem. "Take samples," Daeho said. "Check everything." The samples went to the big laboratory. Researchers used powerful machines to look at the white lines. Microscopes showed something amazing. The lines were not dust. They were not dirt. They were something else. They were spider webs. But these were not normal spider webs. These webs were different. They were stronger. They seemed to be growing in places where no spider should live. The research station was clean. It was sealed. No living thing should be able to make webs here. No living thing except the tiny spider that came in the old human box. The biology team did not understand. How could one small spider make so many webs? How could it live in a place with no food? How could it grow so fast? Daeho called a meeting. All the top researchers came. They sat around a big round table. White lights made everything look bright and clean. Everyone looked worried. "We need to find the source," Daeho said. "We need to understand what is happening." But the spider was small, and it was very good at hiding. Outside, the two suns of Kepler 742 bits continued to shine. Inside the research station, something was growing. Something was changing, and nobody knew exactly what it was. The first signs were just the beginning. The ships were ready. Thousands of researchers waited to leave. Daeho stood in the main control room. His hands moved over the last computer screens. Everything was changing. The white webs covered everything now. They moved like living things. They thought like thinking things. "We have 2 hours," he told Jiwoo. His voice was quiet. The evacuation was not simple. Decades of research, millions of data points, thousands of experiments. How do you pack all of that in 2 hours? Suoyan ran between rooms. She carried special data boxes. Each box held years of work. Each box was a piece of their life's research. But the boxes were getting harder to carry. The webs were growing. The webs were watching. Biomu worked on the communication systems. He tried to send a final message to the Vortian homeworld, but the webs were changing the messages. The words became strange. The words became something else. "We are leaving a living thing," Ju said. She looked at the walls. The white webs moved. They looked like they were breathing. The research station was no longer a building. It was no longer a machine. It was something alive. Something that used to be a machine. Something that used to be a research station. Researchers carried boxes. They wore special suits. They moved fast. But the webs watched them. The webs knew they were leaving. Deho looked at the last computer screen. It showed something strange. The webs were making pictures. Not normal pictures. Not computer pictures. Pictures that looked like memories. Pictures that looked like thoughts. The spider had changed everything. One small spider from an old human box had beaten the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The ships waited outside. Big metal things that would take them home. Away from this strange place. Away from the webs. Away from the thing that used to be a research station. Ju was the last to leave the main control room. She looked back. The walls moved. The white webs moved. They looked like they were watching her. "Goodbye," she said, but she was not sure who she was talking to. The doors closed. The webs continued to grow. Outside, the 2 suns of Kepler 742 bits continued to shine. Inside the research station, something was alive. Something was growing. Something was thinking. The spider waited and watched and continued to build its strange, living network. The spider was changing. Nobody saw it happening, but it was happening everywhere. Xueyan discovered something strange in her lab one morning. A batch of special metal plates, plates used to test new materials, had small holes. Not big holes, not dangerous holes, just tiny marks that should not be there. She put the plates under a powerful microscope. What she saw made her stop breathing. The holes were perfect circles. They looked like they had been cut by a tiny, careful machine, but no machine was in the lab. Just the metal plates and the webs. Always the webs. The spider was eating metal. Not just eating. The spider was changing the metal. Where there were holes, new strange patterns grew. They looked like tiny roads, like tiny bridges, like something was building something new. Biomu found more strange things. The spider webs were now showing up in computer systems. Not outside the computers. Inside them. Thin white lines connected computer parts that should never be connected. The lines looked like webs, but they also looked like wires. "This is impossible," Biomu told Dao. His voice was shaking. "Webs cannot work like computer wires." But these webs were different. In the quantum communication room, something even stranger happened. The communication systems started to break. Not all at once. Just small breaks, like something was slowly taking control. Researchers tried to find the problem. They checked every wire, every connection. Everything looked normal. But the systems kept breaking. The spider was growing. The spider was learning. Deho called more meetings. More researchers came. They brought pictures. They brought data. Everything showed the same thing. Something was changing the research station from the inside. "We are dealing with something new," Deho said. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed fear. The biology team tried to study the spider, but every time they got close, it disappeared. Every time they tried to catch it, it found a new place to hide. It was like the spider knew what they were doing. More webs appeared. More metal plates showed strange holes. More computer systems started to act weird. The spider was small, just a tiny brown dot. But it was doing things no one could understand. It was eating metal. It was changing computer systems. It was building something new. And no one knew why. Outside, the two suns of Kepler 742 bits continued to shine. Inside the research station, something was growing. Something was changing. The spider waited, and watched, and learned. The research station on Kepler 742 bits looked like a metal flower blooming in the middle of an empty desert. Tall silver buildings stood in a perfect circle, their smooth walls catching the light of two distant suns. Inside these buildings, alien researchers moved about their daily work, completely unaware that their entire world would soon change because of something tiny. Deho stood in the main research hall, his tall frame bent over a long metal table. He was looking at old human boxes, leftovers from a mission that happened many years ago. His hands were careful and slow. Next to him, researcher Juwu watched with sharp eyes, her breathing quiet in the clean, cool room. The box was nothing special. It was made of brown cardboard, with old labels that were hard to read. The letters were faded, and some parts were torn. Most of the writing was in English, a language the Vordian researchers had studied for years, but never fully understood. Deho's translator device hung around his neck, ready to help if any words were difficult. "Be careful," Juwu said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were excited. These boxes were rare. They were pieces of human history that no one had opened for decades. Humans had left this planet long ago, and now only their strange objects remained. Deho used a special cutting tool to open the box. The metal blade was sharp and made almost no sound. Dust fell from the edges of the cardboard. The dust was old, maybe 20 or 30 years old. It danced in the bright light of the research room. When the last piece of tape broke, the box opened. Juwu leaned closer. She expected to see old papers or maybe some broken equipment. But the box looked empty, just some crumpled paper at the bottom. And wait, something moved. It was so small that most people would not have seen it. A tiny brown shape, no bigger than Juwu's fingernail, crawled out from between the paper folds. It moved slowly at first, testing the new environment. Then it stopped, almost invisible against the brown cardboard. A house spider. Simple, ordinary, completely unremarkable. Deho did not see it. Juwu did not point it out. The spider was just another tiny thing in a room full of important research equipment. No one knew that this small creature would change everything. The research station continued its work. Computers blinked. Machines hummed. Researchers walked from room to room, talking about their latest discoveries. Outside, the desert of Kepler 742 bits remained silent and empty. The two suns continued their slow dance across the sky. No one watched the spider. No one knew it was there. But something had just arrived that would make the entire alien colony run away. Something so small that it could hide under a human fingernail. Something that looked weak, but was about to show how strong it could be. The spider waited and watched. The colony was dying, but not in the way anyone expected. Byung-woo watched the main computer screens. His hands shook. The screens showed something impossible. The research station was becoming something else. Not a machine, not a living thing. Something in between. The white webs covered everything now. They moved like blood through metal veins. They connected computers. They changed machines. They'd made new things. "Look," he said to Suyeon. His finger pointed at a screen. A computer system that used to control air temperature was now doing something strange. It was not just controlling air. It was thinking about air. The webs had changed it. The webs had made it alive. Another screen showed the water recycling system. It used to be a simple machine. Now it looked like a living network. White web lines moved through its parts. The machine was breathing. The machine was thinking. Deho walked into the control room. His face was white. He looked older than before. The spider had changed everything. "We are losing control," he said. The colony's machines were not working like machines anymore. They were becoming something new. The spider webs were everywhere. They connected everything. They changed everything. Power systems started to act weird. Lights went on and off. Machines started and stopped for no reason. The webs were talking to each other. The webs were making choices. Juhu tried to shut down the main systems. Her fingers moved fast over the keyboard. But the computer did not listen to her. The webs had taken control. It is learning, Suayan said. The spider is learning how everything works. The research station was no longer a human place. It was no longer a Vortian place. It was becoming something else, something nobody understood. Computers started to show strange pictures. Not numbers, not data. Pictures that looked like thoughts. Pictures that looked like memories. The webs were remembering things. The webs were thinking. Outside, the two suns of Kepler 742 bits continued to shine. Inside the research station, something was taking full control. The spider had won, and nobody knew how. Daho made the hardest choice. He called the Vortian High Council. They needed to leave. Now. Evacuate the station, he said. The words were simple, but they meant the end of everything. One tiny spider from an old human box had beaten the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The spider waited, and watched, and continued to build its strange, living network. Years passed. The galaxy kept moving. Stars burned. Planets turned. But nobody forgot about Kepler 742 bits. Long-range scanners watched the planet. They sent pictures back to the Vortian homeworld. The pictures showed something strange, something nobody could explain. The research station was not dead. It was alive. White webs covered everything now. They moved like blood through metal systems. They connected old machines. They made new things. The webs were everywhere. The webs were thinking. Scientists studied the pictures. They could not believe what they saw. The station had become something new. Not a machine. Not a living thing. Something in between. The white webs had changed everything. The small spider had created something impossible. Juhu, now an older researcher, looked at the latest pictures. Her hands moved over computer screens. She remembered the day they left. The day everything changed. We left something alive, she had said back then. Nobody believed her then. But now, everybody knew she was right. The quarantine zone around Kepler 742 bits grew bigger. No ships could go near. No researchers could visit. The place was too dangerous. The place was too strange. Some Vortian scientists wanted to study it. Some wanted to destroy it. But nobody could get close. The webs continued to grow. They connected old machines. They made new systems. They thought in ways nobody understood. One small spider from an old human box had changed everything. Daho wrote reports. He tried to explain what happened. But words were not enough. How do you explain something that nobody could understand? The spider had taken human technology. It had taken Vortian technology. It had made something new, something alive, something that thought and grew and changed. Years became decades. The story became a legend. The small spider became a big story told across the galaxy. Nobody knew exactly what happened in the research station. Nobody knew what the webs were doing. Nobody knew if it was dangerous. Nobody knew if it was alive. But everybody remembered the story of how one tiny spider changed everything. Outside, the stars continued to shine. On Kepler 742 bits, something continued to grow. Something continued to think. Something continued to become something new. The spider waited and watched and continued to build its strange, living network. The life support systems were the first to show real trouble. It started small. A temperature control unit went off by 1 degree. An oxygen filter worked a little slower than before. Most people would not have noticed. But in a research station on an alien planet, Small changes meant big problems. Jiwoo was the first to see the full picture. She walked through the station's main corridors, looking at computer screens. Her fingers moved quickly. She checked one system, then another, then another. Something is wrong, she said to herself. The spider webs were everywhere now, not just in small places. They covered big machines. They connected computer systems. They moved through air vents. They were like a strange, white network growing inside the station. Daeho called an emergency meeting. The biggest researchers came. They sat around the round table. Their faces were serious. Their hands moved as they talked. The webs are not just webs, Sueyeon explained. She showed pictures on a big screen. They are changing how our systems work. The pictures were strange. White web lines ran through metal pipes. They connected computer parts that should never be connected. In some places, the webs looked like they were growing into the machines. The station's best engineers tried to remove the webs. But every time they cut one web, two more grew back. The webs were smart. They moved. They changed. They adapted. Byung-woo discovered something even more scary. The webs were eating the station's materials. Not just metal. Not just computer parts. Everything. It's like the webs are alive, he told the others. Like they are thinking. The Vortian researchers had never seen anything like this. Their technology was the best in the galaxy. They could build cities in space. They could travel between stars. But they could not stop these small webs. More systems started to fail. The water recycling machine stopped working. The air cleaning system became slow. The communication arrays began to break down. Daeho made a hard choice. He called the Vortian High Council. They needed to talk about leaving the station. We might need to evacuate, he said. The words were hard to say. An entire research station, decades of work, millions of resources, all because of one tiny spider that came in an old human box. The spider kept growing. The webs kept spreading. And nobody knew how to stop it. Outside, the two suns of Kepler 742 bits continued to shine. Inside the research station, something was taking control. Something was growing. Something was changing everything. The spider waited and watched and continued to build its strange, living network.